Can this £17 stove beat this one, which is 2 to 3 times the price? So for around the price of an MSR Pocket Rocket 2 or a Soto WindMaster like this one, you can get a whole stove system like this. Is it the budget Jetboil killer, or is it all hot air? Watch this video to find out. I have a confession to make. I have been seeing other stoves and other pots. No, don't listen, don't listen. If you've been watching my channel, the alcohol stove, the speedster, and the Firemaple XK6 pot has been the staple of all my videos. Ooh, a year and a half, nearly? Over a year. For a long time I've been looking for a better canister stove, partly because on the Scotland trip, according to my research, after about 2 weeks, the alcohol stove doesn't actually become weight efficient. It sort of starts to tail off at about sort of the 2 week mark, 2 to 3 week mark. And also there's a real problem finding the fuel out and about, because bioethanol or even meth is quite hard to find. Nearly a year ago I looked into getting little sort of freestanding stoves, and they're so expensive. And I wanted a stove with a regulator like the Soto WindMaster. I can't afford the Soto WindMaster. That retails for 60 to 70 quid. It's ridiculously overpriced. Now I already have my trusty Pocket Rocket 2 MSR, which these are probably going to get very expensive given all the trade shenanigans that's happening currently. That doesn't have a regulator, it doesn't have an igniter on it either, and it's not so great at simmering or in the wind. When you put it into a pot, it quite often has a real problem in wind, I've found. This is what I used to use before I switched to alcohol. It's a good stove, but this, you know, retails for £42 on Amazon currently, so it's not a cheap thing. I got mine a bit cheaper, but it's still not very cheap. I was very interested when I heard about this stove, Campingmoon XD-2F, and it's £17 on AliExpress. That's with tax and delivery, which is a crazy price. It is a clone of the Soto WindMaster. I don't care about stuff like that. I think that the Soto WindMaster is overpriced. I mean, 60 quid for a stove is ridiculous. It's not like it's made up titanium or, you know, some rare metal. It's just a normal stove. So for a long time I've been yearning for a stove that's good in the wind, that has a regulator. What a regulator does is that it's better for when it's cold or when your tank is lower, pumps out a regulated output. It just doesn't sort of trail off as something like this would. That struggles when your canister is low. And also its own igniter, sort of compete with something like a Jetboil, but be a lot lighter, a lot sort of simpler, because I'm not a fan of the weight and the bulk of a Jetboil, and also the expense, because Jetboils are, you know, 100 quid plus. And this one, what comes with, which is the little bag, another little pouch, which is what I actually carry it in the pot, and the Whaleweigh pot stand, which is more stable, but it's a real bugger to get on. Collapses, but it's quite bulky for what it is. So what I got, because it's a clone of the Soto, I got what they call the Triflex, which is a little tri-stand, and that's much smaller. Piece of metal. It's expensive what it is, but it just sort of clips on, and there is a reason for that, which we'll get to in a little bit. As it's like the Soto, it also has this which protects it from the wind. It's quite wide, which is good for simmering and cooking. I've not tried it for cooking. I have to say this first, this is not a review. This is a first look and a test. If you want to see real reviews over time of these things, you'll have to watch my trip videos in future where I will use this. That's the only kind of test that means anything. You know, testing this in my garden doesn't mean very much. It has to be used in the field over time. That takes time. I know I'm late to the party on this one, and lots of people have talked about this and what's coming up the next. I like to take my time. I don't just rush out these things, and I don't do single reviews for that reason, because it's not actually that useful for you, because you want to see it actually being used. But this is just showing you the thing and testing it with some water in my garden against the MSR Pocket Rocket. That's all it is. But the reason for getting the Triflex was my other purchase, which is I always wanted to have a smaller version of this. This is a 1 litre pot, which is actually slightly bigger than a litre, so it holds a litre and more, which is great for bigger dishes, but it's kind of the sweet spot is the fact that my little tiny titanium pot is in the infamous titanium scan video. 750 to the top, this only really holds about 600, 700, as Martin from Soul Trails pointed out. I always wanted kind of something in between. You can see the lid's got rather melted and it doesn't really stay on very well. It is a good pot. This is a really good pot. I still recommend it. You know, having the heat converter is really good. 2 of you, or you're doing bigger meals, this is ideal. I wanted something that clipped a bit like the MSR pots, where it clips and holds the things together. So we have the Petrel G2, I think it is. I always get confused because like the G2 is the bigger one and the G3 is the smaller one, which to me the numbering system should be the way around. It should be the bigger number, should be the bigger one. I don't know. There's a 650 version and this is the 750 version, and the lid is clipped on by the handle. And it's got a Triton top, and you can remove the rubber center, I assume, if you want to have a vent hole, put your own handle in, I suppose. And like the other one, it's aluminium. Please don't at me about safety aluminium, I don't care. I don't give a crack about that. Titanium videos full of people telling me that aluminium causes dementia. I bet these people probably use tin foil and think it's tin. It's a smaller part. What's new about it is having these vents on the inside. So that means docking, 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 docking. Anyone played Elite? Yeah, so the little slots means the stove can go right by here, and so that actually protects it from the wind, like that. Well, it's upside down, but you know, you get the idea. I can hear people clickety-clacketing away in the comments about this. Hey, that's got 3 arms, that should fit, right? I've not tried this. I'll try and finagle it. You can sort of, you can adapt it, but it does kind of fit, but not very well. It fits enough for this test. What does fit apparently is the BRS 3000T, the Pocket Rocket Deluxe, the one that does have the regulator and is probably closest to this, and as we've seen, the Soto WindMaster, well, the Triflex. So if you've got the WindMaster or the Campingmoon, that'll fit. I'm sure I'll get comments about why didn't you do this with the Pocket Rocket Deluxe or the Soto WindMaster. The reason is money. I bought a 70 quid stove because I don't have 40 to 60 quid to plunk down on a canister stove. And to those people I say become a member or tip me the money and I will go and buy the stove and do the test. At the moment the channel's not monetized, so you get what you pay for. Although I think this is still a fairly good test. So for the gram weenies out there, the Pocket Rocket is 73 grams. The Campingmoon on its own, 71 grams. Now if I balance this on carefully, this is a stove buckaroo, that's 77.6, 77.7. So you can see it's very, very similar weight. It's only a few grams more. And with a super heavy, I don't know if I can balance this on here, 98.8, rounding up. And measuring the pot, 176.7. So on this sunny day, let's get testing. It does look like Sputnik. It looks like something from 1950s. It is fiddly to get this on, and it's fiddly to get it off as well. Anyway, so yeah, especially when you do that, it's much easier to put on. He said, yeah, you see, just clips on. Oh, get it right. I've got a canister of Coleman's performance gas. I have actually tried this before. I will show that footage now. It was on my old phone, so I thought I'd, you know, test this new iPhone, but also test it versus that, which I didn't do last time. Well, as always, make sure the valve is closed before doing this. This is hard to do while filming. You'd be amazed by how many simple things are really difficult when you start filming them. They suddenly become very, very complicated. I will boil 750 mil. That's one of the sad things about this pot. Unlike the XK6, which has, you know, gradated markers, this only actually has a 75L marker, and I'll trust that, whatever that line is. But the Campingmoon's going to have a harder task because that's doing everything from cold. The one to beat is going to be that one. I suspect at full speed that might actually be faster, but that's partly not the point. The point is to do with wind, which of course there isn't very much wind today. This is not a scientific test. This is just a bit of fun to see how fast it is. This time, good. And the fun thing is going to be trying to line these. Ow. Check and see. I don't want to melt my camera. Oh, we're getting steam already. At 1:15. Wow. I'm going to count that as 1:30. Whoa, hey, woo. Yeah, that caught me out off guard. Because I was expecting more like 2 minutes, and that was, I would say, rolling ball before 1:31. It was, I'll have a look at the footage, but yeah, when it started started rocking, that was definitely a few seconds before that, so that was wow, that's pretty good. Whereas last time I tried it, which is a colder day I suppose, it was 2 minutes. Wow. I had trouble getting on. This combination is better with the igniter. How am I going to light it underneath there? That's going to be the fun thing. And as always, safety first. Yep, that was open. The water started dropping down the sides. I was like, ah, because that was a rolling boil. The fact this pot is already warmed up is fine. It was my fault. I wanted to start from total cold, but I didn't, so we won't start from total cold for this. And I say, if you want a scientific test, then pay me. Of course, it sounds like a rocket going off. Make sure the lid's on, yep. There's a reason why they call it the Pocket Rocket. And it's much louder than the Campingmoon. Remember at the 1:15 mark we started getting steam, so let's see. Look at steam at 1:15. Not getting much steam at 1:15. Also, it's the problem about these clear lids. You can kind of see what's going on, but you really, it's better to look at what's happening with the steam coming out the little hole, because they just steam up and you can't see anything. So, wow, that is on full. Nope, still. It could be the lack of a regulator, because this is not a full tin. This probably shows you why. Oh, and you can hear the wind is affecting it. You could hear that variation. Just a little bit of wind. Oh, I'll call that at 3 minutes. Ow! You see, that's why you don't film it and you dive straight in. So yeah, I'd call that about 3 minutes, or maybe just before. I'd have to have a look at the footage. But yeah, you could see that you could hear it sort of varying as the wind came through. It's not really that windy today, but it's enough to have slowed that down a bit. There is quite a gap there. Maybe that's the difference between that and because the Campingmoon sits much closely. What happens is the heat exchanger acts as a wind guard. It's possible that Pocket Rocket is more fuel efficient, maybe, I don't know. But still, that's quite surprising. Wow. Now, I was not expecting that. The stove that's more than half the price of this one is twice as fast. That was not what I was expecting. Even when I've finagled it into here, which is tricky and best done before you light it, as I found, and that's £17 all in on AliExpress. Yeah, you gotta wait a week or two. Given that it's twice as quick, you know, and it's got a regulator and it's got a piezo lighter on it, so you don't need to, though it's always a good idea to take a lighter just in case that fails. Always double up your ignition sources. Always take matches and a lighter, or piezo and a lighter or something. Never just rely on one thing, but the fact it's got a piezo, a regulator, it fits the Triflex. Irony is that little tiny bit of metal was £8. So, you know, okay, if we add that in, it's still cheaper. It's still, you know, nearly half what the Pocket Rocket. And when you talk about the Soto WindMaster, which is at £60, that's like a no-brainer, isn't it? And also, I love this pot. It fits the Caldera cone, if you're wondering, the one I made in this video, in the DIY video, kind of almost the same diameter, so it fits fine. It's obviously shorter, so it's lower in it, which is not a bad thing. I have used it successfully with the alcohol stove as well, so I'll work with that. So I will be using this on future trips, definitely. So that was a surprising outcome of this video. I wasn't expecting that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, we have lots of gear reviews on this channel. It's not really something I do anymore, it's more trips, but you will see videos like the titanium scam on the screen now, and also me looking into wood stoves versus alcohol stoves. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll speak to you soon. There's nothing for you, Robin. Hello. I hope Robin's not going to sing all the way through this. Right. That might be a problem.